Good morning.
Morning.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
It's been a couple days since we were able to do this.
I know.
Didn't get my fix on talking about unpopular things. So, you got anything first? First strike.
So this probably won't be a lengthy discussion, but just a curiosity I have. I watched a video last night about this idea of having parents decide where they want to send their kid to school instead of having to use the school in the system in which they live.
Right.
And the whole idea behind it, of course, is, you sort of increase competition, schools step up their game, because if they're not doing well, then they lose kids. They go elsewhere. Why hasn't this always been the thing? Like, it makes sense. Why is it that we sort of have stuck with this, only in your school district? I mean, we've even arrested people. There's a mother who's been thrown in jail because she tried to sneak her kid into a school in a system that she didn't live. So it's like, holy crap, it's a serious deal. Why?
Okay, so a couple different angles. We'll take the practical approach before we make it political. Then we'll get super political on it, because this is not going to be a slow or a small conversation, I assure you.
Okay.
Okay, so let's play that out. Let's roll it through all of its deals. So you have good schools and you have bad schools. What makes a good school versus a bad school? So if I had a suburban Canfield school and I had an urban school like here in Youngstown, and I took them comparatively, do we have an equal product on a comparative equal product?
Probably not.
Why? What makes one product worse?
Well, I haven't looked into them specifically, those locations, but I'd imagine things like student-teacher ratio, the staff that's hired, how good the teachers are, even curriculum that they have to teach, anything that's required of them versus what helps the student, what helps the families. Am I anywhere close?
Well, no, I mean, those are all considerations, and some of them are going to have some legs. And so if you ask a teacher what makes for a productive classroom, you're going to have engaged parents, you're going to have curriculum that's at the top level, trained, competent teachers, and then participation of students who want to be there, right?
Yeah.
So in urban areas, poorer communities, you're going to take a lot of kids that have to be there that don't want to be there, and the teacher is not really teaching; they're just making people not die that day. Right.
Yeah.
And then you have Canfield, where, or a suburban community where it's more affluent. And so the kids are pursuing academics and they want to be there and they're engaged in it. They're taking it all in. So the teacher has a little bit easier of a time. So if you gave, and there's multiple reasons, and we'll talk about all the reasons. So if you gave parents, right, that the ability to just move their kid wherever they want, then they're obviously going to take them to schools that are the Canfields, and they're not going to place them in the institutions that are the urban schools. So you just have this flight. And who would you be left with in an urban school if everybody who was on an academic track was able to move their kid? You would have all the derelicts.
Yeah.
And then when you're hiring teachers, you're not creating curriculum. Nobody's there to learn. And they're just basically guards more than they are teachers.
Like, you have to be here, so here we are.
So the political end is teachers unions. They don't want this to happen. They want to hold the suburban, the would-be movers hostage in a school, so the ratios of kids that don't want to be there don't get too high. So if you have in a class, you have 50% of the people who are, a pencil to the paper and paying attention and absorbing it. That would even be awful for a teacher, because you'd have to spend so much time on the people who didn't want to be there or causing disturbances and whatever.
Yeah.
I went to an urban school to do, I do junior achievement on a regular basis, and each school, right, is so much different. So much different. So I served one class in, I think it was Harding High School, and I was teaching entrepreneurship. And so we were going over all of the CEOs and people through history who made a big impact on corporations and, big innovators and whatever. And when I was in that classroom, right, how many people do you think were paying attention? How many kids in that classroom were paying attention to anything I was saying? Zero. There were zero people in that class. And the only interactions were disturbing interactions where they were effing with me for even talking about something. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking the plight of the teacher being able to be able to do any kind of education in that room, 0% chance anybody learned anything that day. And that's the teacher's experience every day of their
And
their
do you
life.
think it's because they grow up in this environment at home that they don't even think that what you're talking about is a possibility?
No,
Like,
it's
why are
not
you
that.
even-
It culturally, either you put emphasis on academics or you don't. And we've taken, especially in urban communities, academics is contrary to and social status and the hierarchy of, the coolness factor and how you're accepted by your peers and whatever. The smarter you are, the lower you are on that hierarchy. So as long as culturally families are sending kids there that have no appreciation for academics because the parents don't have it, then
Yeah.
you get schools that are corralling the dumbest of us, right? Who don't want to learn and are, kind of like making their way ascending up the social structure. At the same time, no academics are getting done.
Yeah, I knew a girl, this was down south. I think this was a school in Alabama, but she was talking about she was teaching at this sort of city school, and it was little kids. It was elementary. And she says, "Hey, does anyone know what day it is?" And a kid raised his hand and he's like, "May?" And she's like, "No, what day is it?" "June?" And she's like, "Wow." And she's like, she gets frustrated because she says the parents don't know either. They're kind of on the same level, and then the next generation's on the same level, and the next generation's on the same level, and it's like, that's it. They're just kind of stuck, and
Yeah.
then nobody wants to teach there, and then the people that are there are sort of like you said, just sort of like a babysitter that day, basically.
Yeah. And Linda says, for heaven's sake, the discipline problems are the main problem. That is absolutely, because people don't know how to behave.
Yeah.
Culturally, we have made it so acceptable that how we act and behave without considerations, without, politeness and manners and whatever, like everything that socially binds and make good for civilization is pushed off as the thing not to do. Like we're pursuing every vice that there is. And so you have what we have here, which is schools that are untenable for education. And if you give parents the ability, if you send your kid to an urban area, you look around and like they're the only one trying and they're not learning anything that day, you're going to move the first chance you get. And if we open that up, now you're left with schools that are regular and then institutions that are just corralling. And that's my argument for let's not make it so that it's a requirement to go to school, right? If you don't want to go to school, no school for you.
No truancy.
We're paying for it. If you paid $10,000 or $15,000 a year for a kid to blow off something that you're handing them, they don't value it. Like let's just say, how hard would they try to get there if you told them they couldn't go, right? Then the ones who really wanted to learn would overcome obstacles to be able to get that education that I'm paying for. People don't want to be there. Go do something else. I mean, put
where it gets you.
Yeah, right. And so societally, that's only a hair better because now you have completely uneducated people out in the streets before their brain is developed. Now you're going to have disturbances on the outside and the inside.
I was just going to say, do you think the crime rate would go up though if they weren't required to be there?
So what you have to do is you have to take kids that want to learn and put them in schools where they're going to do a good job. And if you don't want to learn, you're going to put them to work so that they, won't be idle. So if we're going to own 8 hours of their day anyway, put them in a factory screwing caps on and make it so that they don't have the choices to be derelicts that they will eventually be.
So you're pro, they have to go somewhere.
They have to go somewhere.
You can't just roam the streets and cause problems, but you could.
Would you much rather send a company $10,000 to put this person to work and give them a distractive mechanism so that they don't fall victim to all of their idiocy, right? Or $10,000 to go get an education. Well, if we're doing that anyway, it's no worse. At least we have a chance to give teachers the reprieve they need that don't have to educate some doofus who doesn't know the difference between a month and a day, right? Get them doing something productive.
So would you then scale back like child labor laws? Like, hey, let them work younger.
Heck yeah. Do something with them where they're not going to be a blight to society. Absolutely.
It is interesting to see because like my daughter is 11. I could totally see her holding a job. I totally could. I could see her doing a little part-time job, whether it's at like, nothing that's super complicated, but something I could totally see her handling and making a little bit of money. And she does, try to help out with like watching neighbors' pets or, picking up sticks in a family member's yard or doing little things to try to make money. And I'm like, I could totally see kids like maybe not a full work day or something, but doing something more.
We have a problem with measuring our results in this country, and it goes across the board, not just with education, with anytime we spend money on something. So if you gave $100 to a charity and $12 made it to the thing that you gave the money for, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you measure that, is that a disappointment?
You said 12 out of 100?
You give 100 and you're like, I want to make sure somebody gets fed tonight. And when you give 100, $88 disappears and 12 feeds somebody. How do you feel about that?
Not good.
So if we have a kid, like if we measure whether or not a kid is actually learning something, we got to be able to say, all right, what we're doing, not working. Like it's not that we just measured it. We have an 88% loss in, like, I know we're not going to get to 100%, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we can find a charity that finds out 80%, they figure out how to get 80% to the intended, you're willing to lose 20% efficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that administrators have to be paid and marketing has to be done and whatever. It's only when it slides so freaking low that we're like, hold up, we're wrong. We did it wrong. And so teachers union and the education establishment made it hands off that you can't touch anything over there without somebody going ballistic. You can't say that you have a school that underperforms in every department, but let's start another calendar year and do the same shit that we did the previous year and expect that, oh, how'd that freaking happen again?
Yeah.
You got to take a wrecking ball to the 80% loss in efficiency, do it completely different, totally restructured. And if it means we allow the families and the kids to leave those schools and let them become the worst and take a wrecking ball to that and find out who's left, who doesn't want to show up. If we're like, okay, we're going to do 1 year with show up if you want to, and we'll really give you some really hardcore education,
Mm-hmm.
or go find something else to do. See who shows up.
Yeah. And how about this idea of, even if you do have a classroom full of students that are willing to be there, how do you feel about the idea of then parents having a say in what is being taught? Like we hear, what's it called? The new way to do math. I keep hearing about. Some parents didn't like that. Some parents were complaining that some schools weren't teaching cursive and they thought they should. Critical race theory, all kinds of stuff you hear as these controversial topics.
Mm-hmm.
So the parent could be like, hey, I don't like that you teach that, or I don't like that you don't teach this. So if this school does, I'm going there. Do you think that would be beneficial?
If you're allowed to move around,
Mm-hmm.
and schools can market themselves so that they're teaching something that you line up with, then the marketplace will reward the good innovations in education and they'll discipline ones that are terrible.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't even think we're smart enough for this conversation yet, because we're talking about complicated deals. We can't do the simple things. So if we just removed all the other shit until we're like, we can just hit the status quo stuff,
Yeah.
right? That's where we need to start out from.
We can't even get the policies in the schools now to run well, let alone let's change up the entire system and where people can go and what they're doing.
We're contemplating like tier 2 stuff and we're effing up tier 1 stuff. So I think we get to simplify things and say, okay, what's the purpose of education? For the longest time, it was to deliver colleges with taxpayer funded students, right? It was all about the business model of getting higher education fed with a never ending supply of tuition payers, right? And at one time it was deliver people to the industries that were needed of workers. And maybe that, factory workers or agriculture or whatever. But we got to find out what it is that we're doing, because we're selling really high priced pieces of paper to people and they're valueless in the actual marketplace.
Yeah.
So we got to reset and say, all right, what is school? What do we want bare minimum for every person and what's needed?
Yeah. Like we've talked before about this idea of, big industry or big business comes to an area, it's going to be great for jobs. It's going to be great for the local economy, but we don't have workers skilled in that industry. Well, then you reach out to the schools and say, here's what we need. We need skills like this. Then the school develops a program to teach that.
To feed into the marketplace. Yeah. So if there's a good relationship between hiring and education, then that's where we need to go. Then it's not parents saying, I want to learn cursive. Like, it doesn't come from parents and what they want to learn. The stuff that they teach has to connect to what you're going to do with that thing once you're done.
Yeah.
And for like I said, because we were handing people off to higher education and universities, what they scaled curriculum so that now you can go into a college and it would be sort of like a ramp into the next level of education rather than what you're going to do with that education on the other side. I talked to a lot of college age people that are coming out, and I asked them, what do you want to do when you graduate?
Yeah.
And that should be the easiest question the college educated person answers. And they are freaking clueless. Oh, so you just spent $200,000 on a piece of paper as a ticket into something, and you don't know what the something even is right now? Are you kidding me?
Because for years we were told, you go to college. If you want to make something of yourself, go to college. If you want a good job, go to college. If you want to make money, go to college. You've got to go to college. And then we get to college and we're like, now what?
Yeah. All they did was sell you a bunch of overpriced, overpriced everythings. And man, and Michael says it's all about having a moral compass. And yeah, I mean, but we can't expect, we almost have to assume that the secularists have broken the systems so much that moral compass and ethics and, being considerate with other people and, all the virtues that come along with that, that's gone. Like we have people that are narcissists and are self-interested, and they're going to do whatever benefits them and to hell with everybody else around us. Everything has to react and respond to that, because we're not going to convince people, go to church and learn how to be selfless, right?
Yeah.
Like the version of it is so broken. I don't think we come back from that part.
Yeah. Especially as we get more and more into a society where to say you have a certain moral, not obligation, but like if you say, I have this certain set of morals, I have this certain set of values, and this is what I want to live by, someone else can so easily come in and be like, well, that's terrible. Well, you're selfish. You're a bad person for thinking that. You're like, wait a minute. When did it become a bad thing to think these things? It's like we're getting to the point that we're so far gone that the wrong way looks right. And the old right way either looks wrong or is no longer accepted, if that makes sense. Like things are getting...
Here's what we did. There are people that are in positions of power, and when you put stupid people in positions of power, this is what you get. So here was a thought experiment I did as a kid, like not as a kid, but as getting into an adulthood. I started looking at generations that were going to follow. Like
I could see you doing that as a kid.
Yeah. Millennials were my biggest concern. Okay. Because here's what millennials didn't know. Millennials were entitled. They were lazy.
I'm a millennial. And I'm an older millennial though.
I'm talking about you. So,
good.
So they're entitled. They were lazy, right? They were judgmental about how everything was, but they didn't know how anything freaking functioned. They were given something that was in good shape. They didn't care how it got there. They took it all for granted. And I was like, this generation is going to fuck everything up. Why? Because here's an example. So zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
Right? Now, somebody fought off the zombies and they corralled them in a building and they wrote on the door, do not open, right? So all you've got to do is follow the instructions, do not open, and you're good. A millennial, being the brain dead that they were, they would walk up to the door and say, somebody said do not open. I wonder why, right? And so they would open it, right? Breaking the solution that was already there. And now we're zombified again, right? But if it took brain power to not just, go a couple levels deeper and say, maybe there's a reason that we did this thing in the past generation. Let me get an understanding for the history that made this a good solution. And let me not break it and find out by creating the chaos, right?
So
that was my biggest concern.
Still question, still maybe change, but no.
Yeah, don't dumbly open the door, right? Until you know enough information. But they felt like hey, let's break these institutions. We have no understanding for the sake of breaking it because we're smarter, and then make it somebody else's problem once it's destroyed. Well, we're on the byproduct of that. And I can't just blame the millennials. Everybody after them still doesn't know what these things play in our society and how important they are into supporting in the foundations, but they'll break it anyway and be like, oh, how'd that happen? Right? They do that all the time.
Yeah, it must be getting worse. Cause like I said, I'm an older millennial. So I feel like maybe people my age are on the cusp of that, but the younger millennials and then everybody else, I see that trend sort of increasing.
So the foundations are like that. We were situated pretty well. Okay. So let's just say you're a punk kid who your brain's not done being cooked and you're handed a rule. And I said, hey, lock our doors at night, right? We're going to shut all the windows and lock all our doors at night. And you've never experienced a break-in or an assault or whatever. And you're like, I wonder why we do this door locking thing. It's kind of stupid, right? But there was wisdom that was told to you, and all you had to do was say, I don't have a reason to, and I don't have a reason not to. Let's lock the doors. But instead, you don't.
I'm going to trust the person who knows.
Right. So foundationally, what's the door locking? We had the nuclear family. We don't like the nuclear family now. Why? It's a rule. What foundation did it deliver to us? You had a mom, and you had a dad, and you had coaching from both skill sets that are on both sides of the gender equation. Yeah. So you have a kid and they're taught specific things from their father and a specific thing from their mother, and they're made into a more complete human being that is better and smarter than the people that came before them. That is the proper way of doing it. Okay. So then we're like, yeah, but what about, single moms? Right. So do we then craft rules that cater to the single mom where there's a missing element of the foundational nuclear family? Right. Do we make them feel better about creating incomplete families, or do we try to support it and say, these are the outliers, right? We're going to help you out, but we don't want any more of you. We want to create more nuclear families and fight to keep the nuclear family together. We don't want to make exemptions and experiments within trying to take the lesser situation and given it some kind of advantage because it's broken, right? So do we feel kind when we're trying to cater to people who are in the exception? Sure. But we shouldn't try to make the exception the rule, and because we don't understand what the nuclear family is supposed to do for generations, right?
Yeah. MLO says parents live in the past and want some things for kids what they did, not what's best for today.
Yeah, they want to be their friend and make it easier for them.
And same things for kids.
But think about how wrongly that is. It's so wrong, right? Yeah. So let's just say you became a runner because you did hard things, right? And what if I'm like, well, my kid, I want him to be a runner too, but I don't want him to do all the training and the things that make you strong and the things that build your character. I just want you to be a runner. So let me craft different rules so that you can skip all the things that made you into that thing, because I think I'm saving you from the frictions. But then you go run and you get injured, right? And I don't make the connection. The reason you got injured is because I let you skip all of the frictions that you didn't like. And the millennial generation is really big on, they don't like the training. They want the prize. And so if we can get you to the prize without the training, and then wonder why you're an incomplete person that can't handle the prize in the first place, because you didn't go through the shit that made it valuable and made it you worthy of it.
So I used to say that when we bash a generation, and it could be millennials, it could be anybody.
I bash every generation.
Yeah. So that generation was raised by the other.
Mm-hmm.
So is it at all the responsibility of the other? Like if a millennial screws up their kid and that kid is now some kind of way, is it the kid's fault? Is it the
Well, it doesn't matter. Once it's broken that way, once it's broken, it will take. And when you study civilizations, every civilization does this, every single one. Okay. And when it cycles, when you have prosperity and you're still, we'll use religion as a standpoint. So religion foundationally kind of kept your worst in check, gave you a written set of rules that you try to follow to be a good person, right? And after you remove religion, that foundation, it's good for a little while because there's enough people in the system. But you see the outliers who don't have a moral compass and aren't following godly principles and have no fear of God whatsoever, right?
Mhm.
And then you're like, okay, well, there's only a few of them. And then there becomes more of them, right? And then you can't protect yourself from the people that you let be created because you've eroded that foundation. So everybody then is in bondage, right? Because nobody has any of the freedoms. But then everybody gets fed up with being in that bondage and they revolt against it and they create the foundation that they shed from the previous generation.
Yeah.
So if wise people were able to say, hey, here's what you're going to do. You're going to make some mistakes and the mistakes are going to make things hard and they're going to get sick of the mistakes and you're then going to reinvent the rules that you shed in the first place. You're going to do that. Why don't you just keep the rules how they are right now and make them better rather than thinking that you're going to engineer something that the wise people for thousands of years before you invented for a purpose and reason, right? And then everybody's going to be like, nope, not me. I'm the exception. It doesn't have to apply to me. I'm going to unlock.
I know better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what we do. We're just stupid human beings. But it's going to happen. The more stupid people that are the more stupid people that are in power, the faster that happens. And my hope is that we get to the bottom of that bondage part of the cycle. So we revolt and reinvent ourselves. Even if we come to the same conclusion, I'm going to say, I told you so. I told you so. Because I remind you regularly, hey, secularists, you're going to ruin things, right? So every time something happens because you remove religious foundation from our society, I'm going to say, I told you so. And it's annoying, but it makes me feel better.
Isn't there even, and it's funny when I bring up the Bible because I just this year started reading it and knew absolutely nothing about it until this year. But, isn't like in the Old Testament, they talk about these times where it was like, okay, well, this was a time where there was no laws. Everybody just did what they felt was right.
Yes.
But then you see the trouble that gets them into.
100%.
It's like, well, you stole this from me. Well, I wanted it. There's no laws. We just do what we think it's right. I think I could have it, but it's mine. I don't want you to take it. Well,
tough shit.
Good luck, And it's like, that's an interesting concept. That's kind of like what some people are pushing on, but they don't see how that doesn't work.
People, the people that should be in power are the people who could say, I'm going to make this choice and I can get a full understanding of why they put do not open on that door. And I'm not even going to consider opening the door until I have such an understanding of why that door was closed, and maybe give credit to the wise people before them that they know the zombies coming out is bad and keeping them in is good, no matter how I feel about it.
And you could still eventually sort of be probably like the old Joe where you push back and rage against the machine. And you're like, you know what? This door was only never opened out of oppression or just to control us, whatever, but know that first.
Exactly. And it might be. So don't use your critical thinking and suspend it at anything. Put all possibilities on the table and eliminate them by saying, is it more likely, right, that parents are leaving schools that are terrible because they have interest in their kid not being put in danger by the terrible people that terrible schools warehouse, right?
Yeah.
Critical thinking. But there was an example. I was did you see the New Orleans prison break?
I did see something about a couple guys broke out of a prison, but I didn't read much more about it.
We talk about Idiocracy, and there's a scene in Idiocracy where Joe, the main character, has been sent to prison, right?
Oh,
and he's waiting in line to get in prison, and he gets up to the guard, and he was like, hey, I think I made a mistake. I'm supposed to be in that line getting out of prison. And the prison guard looks him up and he hits him in the back of the head. He's like, stupid, get over in the other line, right? And so then he gets in the other line.
I'm supposed to be getting out today.
Yeah, right. And so then he goes out. I'm thinking, okay, this New Orleans thing was Idiocracy.
Is that what happened?
No, not quite as bad.
I was like, holy crap.
So what they did, it was the dumbest run prison on the planet. The dumbest run prison. So typically in prison, if you want to keep people contained in the prison, then you do certain things. There are certain things like doors that function and lock. That would be good. Cameras, prison guards, right? Bed checks, people watching, right? So these people escaped because this prison had, this isn't part of this escape, but they have doors and locks that didn't work. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, when the escape happened, there were no prison guards in the actual deal. There was a contracted security company that was paid to come in and watch surveillance. And most of the cameras in the prison didn't work. So they were watching cameras that really didn't cover much. And the dude who was paid there ran out for food, which meant there was no people in the actual prison. And so all these guys did is when they knew they weren't being watched, they dug out a hole behind the toilet and the sink, and they made their way out. And they weren't noticed that they were missing for 8 hours.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
So if you wanted to make the most insecure or unsecure prison on the planet, that's exactly how I would engineer and construct
and give them items sharp enough to dig a hole through a wall. Probably another little check.
So again, if we have stupid people that are allowed to do important roles, but do it in the most insidiously stupid way ever, then you have 10 people that escape, not because they were super clever, right? They weren't the top of the, this was not one of your favorite characters in a Prison Break movie. These were dumb people in a dumb prison who got dumped in a dumb city. End of story.
So having not read all about this, is there pushback like, oh, because the prison didn't have enough funding to hire guards to be there and fix our doors and blah, blah, blah. Is there a pushback?
Oh, I'm
like
sure.
That?
I'm sure that's what government does, is it makes justifications where we're not going to come out and say, oh, I'm the goose. We screwed up. We're too stupid to do this job. We're going to blame it on something that's not our fault. And then the public's going to be like, oh yeah, you should give them more funding. Because giving more funding to thing is the sort of like the subtext for explaining every incompetence problem that we have.
Oh, conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Do you think, and not that maybe that happened in this specific situation, maybe, I don't know. But how about the idea of like, hey, if we sort of let something happen, hey, don't fix the cameras. Sure, go take a lunch break. Oh, we don't have anyone on the floor today. Then you look like you need more money in order to get more money.
When stupid people are in positions of power, these are the conversations. A meritocracy is a little meaner than this. You know what meritocracy would put on it? It would say, I'm going to spend $1, and then a week from now, I'm going to measure what I got for my $1. If I got something good, I'm going to give you another $1. That's a meritocracy. That means that your group that is hard to measure output. Like if I gave you cancer research for 20 years, I gave you billions of dollars in cancer research. And then what would the measurement of success be? And how soon would I pull the plug and give that money to somebody else? Would I need any kind of result whatsoever? Or can I do cancer research for 20 years without curing cancer, without making any kind of inroads into any kind of measurable result, and just do that perpetually forever? And then if I cancel your research,
you're the bad guy.
I'm the bad guy. I hate cancer research. But the meritocracy has a hard time overcoming public opinion by saying, I gave the charity that feeds kids, even if they were only getting $12 at the end of the day. But if I cut it and try to give it to someone who will give me 80% results, my cutting it would not survive the public scrutiny of being the mean meritocracy guy.
Yeah. And then you have these little situations like, I don't know, a Senate hearing where they ask you why you cut it. You explain what actually happened, and they talk over you and they don't let you talk, and you can't explain it.
That's when stupid people are in charge. That's why I cannot emphasize enough that when you go to the ballot box, don't vote for your favorite person, the person that talks great and whatever. Look at somebody who you think is going into a problem-solving situation, right? And they've given you an answer sufficient that they have the brain power in order to not only solve the problem, right, but be able to measure it sometime in the future and say, here's what happened. I went to the grocery store and I sent $10, and here's my milk and eggs. And then you get to decide what they gave you for the money that you gave them is sufficient to let them go to the grocery store for you again.
But we are so corrupt, we can't even let them present back what they did. It's like, hey, here is your role. I want a measurable result in this amount of time. So in this amount of time, you come back. What's your measurable result? Well, let me show you. No. I don't think you did it. Well, let me show you. No, I don't think you did it. I don't think you did. I'm trying to show you my result. Well, I think you didn't do a very good job, and that's all I have to say, and we're moving on. And it's like,
This
That's
is
the dumbest thing I've ever
this
seen.
is idiocracy. This is idiocracy. We did this to ourselves, and it will hit.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it will hit the bottom of this, and we'll revolt against it eventually. But it's going to have to get so incredibly stupid for us to make, because they're good at crafting that narrative. Where, you know, the people who do, all right, so do you think politicians that do that, to say Senator, or not Senator Kennedy, but RFK Jr.
Yes.
Do you
Secretary Kennedy?
Do you think that they know they're doing that and they're just playing that role? Or do you think that they're so stupid that they have no idea that that's what they're even doing?
I think it's a little bit of both, but it feels like they know what they're doing, because anybody that truly wants an answer to something, anybody who truly has a concern about something that was done or going to be done or whatever, wants to hear an answer. I truly want to know what your logic was behind this, and you let the person speak. To me, it's one thing to run in the other direction once you're giving an answer. It's another to not even hear the answer. That to me says you're corrupt. You're pushing an agenda. You're just voting for your team, regardless of if it's right or wrong, when you don't even let them give an answer. You don't even seek out why they did something they did, what is actually happening, especially if they said, you're wrong. What you're saying is wrong. Let me tell you what actually happened. And you can't. To me, that says they know what they're doing.
So there's a game that I play, and it's the game of nefarious or incompetent. Okay, so you put people through the test, and once you determine that someone's nefarious, you don't let them near anything. So not only do we have stupid people, right? We have nefarious people on the same deal. So if that, you know, person that was grilling RFK, if they were nefarious, then that's a level higher than incompetence. If they don't even know what they're doing, like they don't have a good enough understanding to be doing it, they're just playing the role, then you almost got to feel bad for them and give them a pass because they're just dumb. But if an important thing, like you're in charge of a jail, right? You don't get to, you're not working the jail, but you're in charge of it. And I say, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to send people there who don't want to be there, and they're going to want to escape, and they're going to want to stab other people and cause lots of problems.
Yeah.
I want you to formulate and engineer a way to make it so that they don't get out, they don't hurt each other, and they can just sit there while they're waiting for their sentencing or their punishment, right? You could construct who you would put there and who you would not put there, right? If your goal was to make sure that those three check boxes were marked, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If in government we wanted to solve a problem, there would be a profile of someone who wants to solve the problem. We'll say Elon Musk. These were all of the attributes of someone who wanted to go into an institution, didn't want to break things for the sake of breaking it, but wanted to evaluate, right, fix, and move on. What did we do to the profile of a problem-solving troubleshooter? What did we do to him socially?
Oh, made him corrupt, made him crazy, made him stupid,
Nazi.
Made him, a Nazi, dangerous,
so we fought,
untrustworthy.
So the immune system of government fought against someone who's actually going to check all the boxes of what we, the taxpayer, and the people that are supposed to be in control here. We killed that option. I wanted to invite him for another 6-month stint because I think he did really good job on the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Now you take then a politician like Joe Biden, who's the opposite of a problem solver and a troubleshooter, really good at just being useless for lots and lots of years. And you had everybody socially running interference for the person who didn't do anything except for become as corrupt a person as you could possibly be.
Yeah. To me, it's like, what is their background? What do they gain from it? And use that to sort of see if you can trust it. Now, some people want to push back and say, oh, well, Elon Musk was going to benefit financially by joining forces with certain people and they were going to fund stuff. And maybe there's some truth to that. But who needs who more? Does Elon need to come in and do what he was going to do? Or do we need somebody who's able to come in and do that? Like Elon could walk away and say, screw you all. Good luck with your waste and fraud. And still go be one of the richest people on the planet. But if he's giving his time to be like, this is corrupt, this is wasteful, and I want to help the American people, and we jump and push back on that, that to me is like, what
Well,
What are we doing?
that is the government's immune system. So here's basically where we talked about schools and how it has to get so bad before we, allow that fleeing of the good people out of the schools and then find out what to do with the bad people. So government has a version. Let's just say that we convened a constitutional convention in Philadelphia. We think that the founders got some stuff wrong. I do. I think the founders got a couple things wrong. So we take the most brilliant people who I would send there, problem solvers. Who do you think we'd actually send to the Constitutional Convention to remake and look at every edition that we've made, the original text of the Constitution? Who would we send there? Who do you think we'd select?
Not who we should, but who we would.
Yeah.
We'd probably select people that were able to make people money, that were able to sort of push agendas, ideas of things.
Special interests.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So we would take somebody from the NRA and send them there to defend what's already there. We'd send somebody from minority groups and we'd send them there to protect civil liberties. We would take an interest group. But I will tell you that we would not send people who could objectively just look at something and know measurably if that was a good idea or not. Like the Second Amendment. Do you think it was a good idea? Like, what's the purpose of the Second Amendment?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want people to I just blanked out. Is that speech or is that bear arms?
Yeah.
Okay, I swapped the two in my head. Well, ideally, wasn't it to protect yourself if there was an uprising against the government or something like that?
So the founders saw that we just escaped the tyranny of a king that was really mean to the colonies and did brutal things.
Yeah.
And they were like, the people had to defend them. These were regular people that fought for this. And we didn't have an advantage here. But we got to know that they're going to be a version of us sometime in the future that are going to have a military that's really strong. And the people are only going to have numbers. They are not going to have weaponry that these other places are. Yeah. So we got to build in that give the people an advantage to keep the tyrannical government in check, not necessarily to use them, to know that if they ever pulled some shit on us, that we would have the ability to fight
defenseless.
back. So when it's crafted, right, that was the do not open door on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the wisdom is putting yourself, so the Constitutional Convention, so name if the Second Amendment was probably a good idea, and the First Amendment also a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Name something that isn't a good idea.
Oh gosh.
What you would change.
I don't know. I'd have to really look into it. I don't know offhand.
Okay, so here's one that was true then that isn't true now.
Okay.
So this was a tyranny of the monarch versus individuals. And there was a mob mentality when you got a group of people together that were sort of like really impoverished by the, sort of like the pressures of a tyrannical government.
Mm-hmm.
So a bunch of people who could get on the same page with what everything meant. All right. So we knew what tyranny was. We knew what poverty was. We knew what the solutions. We didn't want those things. It was a simpler way of pushing against authority.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, I think the mob mentality has way too much power. And they did a little bit where they broke it up where the mobs of California couldn't overrule the rest of the country, but they gave the states and the regular individual voter more power than the government. But we consolidated people into states that now have just as much oppressive power as a government once did. So then there would be sort of like a subset that if California could dwarf Utah and Utah then would be minimized, we have to sort of like balance the power so there's no grouping of people that can grab their pitchforks and torches and overrule the minority of another group.
So the right to protest sort of got too big, basically, too powerful.
Yeah, they had an ability where it could be circumvented using the power of dense populations, because they didn't factor in that people could be so indoctrinated and so stupid that you put that group of people and you create a monster, a big monster that you can control. And now you just created a government that it can be unleashed.
Yeah.
Right. So what do we do in business when this happens? Monopolistic powers. So we take a company, and if they have too much influence where they can affect the regular marketplace, we split them up and we force them to be separated so they're not as big a monster as they could. So this would be sort of like a monopolistic addition to the Constitution.
And we gave ourselves the ability to form NGOs that kind of go
That's
ahead
what we do.
and
that consolidation of power is what destroys the individual liberties, because then the big monster that we create by groups of people can then undermine the liberties of,
Looks like we got a whole lot of comments.
Okay, let's do it.
And some of them are probably going to
Dennis said, we all benefit if America succeeds. Brian said, folks, just because you don't know history doesn't mean it didn't happen. Human ethics and morality for predate the Bible and Christianity, and there is good written and other evidence from areas from areas that weren't and have never become Christian. I've seen good evidence that even Jesus' teaching in the Gospels are derived directly from Greek ethics, discussed and debated 500 years more before he was even born. But the larger problem with today's Christian politics within the...
I just ran out.
Anyway, so let me take this. So modeling in society has existed for all of time.
Yeah.
So what you can't say is because you don't understand or don't have the option that you take the thing. So let's just say you had an imperfect solution at your house, right? And you're like, we could probably do better from the imperfect solution. I have two choices: improve upon what you already have and make it better, or because you don't like that thing, make it nothing. And then the evidence is I'm going to take this sort of superficial explanation how nothing is better than something.
Yeah.
Nobody would choose that. So let's just say that when populations had no density, they were spread out about agriculture and farmland, that people discovered morality because of how we were situated on the playing field of humanity. And now let's just say that Christianity stacked upon that. So that came after. So we were moral because people were brutal. Like what you said in the beginning of this, where they attacked and stole without any cause, and they came to the conclusion they didn't want that. And it was easy to implement those kind of like rough, simple rules when people were spread out, because you had 10 people in your neighborhood, not 10,000. Now you had religion that went on top of that. Now you were able to corral larger masses of people to behave appropriately amongst other people. It was a higher condition of control, right? With higher densities of population. So now you're like, okay, we have densities of population, lots of different people thrown into one group. And now we can discover morality when there's population densities. No freaking mathematical chance in hell that you're right. I know you don't like Christianity, and I don't like being told what to do either. I don't like but if the thing that's there did a better job than nothing, I'm going to keep the thing that was sort of working and improve upon that.
Yeah. I mean, to say, just because you don't know history doesn't mean, do you think the average person knows a little bit about Jesus and Christianity and the Bible, or do they know more about Greek history and law and morality before Jesus existed? They both could be true. They both could be teaching tools. They both could be useful. So we need something then to bring back the moral.
Yeah. And that was the purpose. Like, knowing the utility of the things that you do makes it so that really dumb people can't make some kind of rationality for getting rid of the thing, but then being able to discount the repercussions that you told them that was going to happen. I said, don't open this freaking door. Right. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, doors throughout history have been opened before, and you must not know history because doors can be open. Cool. And then you open it and like, how did the zombies all get out? That's the kind of brain dead thinking that leads to all the trouble. And also you get to not claim any of the consequences for doing the dumb thing. So Brian, I reject whatever you said. I understand that you said, I'm not attacking you personally. This is just the bad logic that I see all the time, and it does not help.
Yeah, it's like, well, don't do that one because we did this over here. Okay, you may have, but you're still going to make the bad decision if you don't have something.
Yeah, and Dennis says you can't legislate morality. Yes, because here's the real sort of like philosophy in it. You can make things more probable.
Mhm.
You can increase the probability. You can't control because that's tyranny. You can't legislate because that's tyranny. What you can do is make things more likely. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you do a thing and it makes things 10% better, 10% better is better than what it was before, right?
Mhm.
And so legislate would mean that I'm going to force you to do the things. We can't do that. It's never been done throughout history where we forced everybody to do the thing. We can only market it like the marketplace of ideas. So we take let's just say we'll use my nuclear family. And you don't like the nuclear family. I like the nuclear family. I can't legislate that everybody does the nuclear family, but I can do some things like education. I can tell you all the benefits of nuclear family, what your kids get out of it. You'll be given, more favor in society with the nuclear family.
Mhm.
All right. I'm not going to force you to do the nuclear family. You're just going to know that what are the benefits of doing the nuclear family. Maybe more people do it because you laid down the foundation of its benefits.
Yeah. And there are people who don't have the nuclear family that are still successful, that can still thrive, that can still live a good life. Doesn't make that a bad idea. It doesn't make, oh, well, this just disproves that the nuclear family is any good. No, it doesn't mean that because some people were still okay without it, that this is not still a good thing, that this still doesn't set you up for success, that this still doesn't give you maybe a higher chance of success or any of those other things.
Yeah. And that's what people like Brian, who have those arguments, are part of the immune system, will fight against making things better and will, through all the reasons, make things considerably worse without the consequence of being responsible for it. That's what I'm saying. Like, we don't listen to people like Brian. We take somebody who said, I don't dislike Christianity and I'm not a fan of Christianity. I'm going to look at the utility of Christianity and find out if there's a public benefit. And if it works out that there's an advantage and give a higher probability of making things better, I'm doing the Christianity utility.
Yeah.
That's the kind of problem solvers that don't have an interest in it and don't have a bias in it, that get to control a lever of power and inflict damage on other people.
Yeah, it's almost like because somebody has a bad experience with something, now the whole thing is bad. When it's like, that experience wasn't that thing. You can't just discount something that might work because something else did or didn't. Like exceptions and rules and how they're used. It's like people just want to fight back if they see one example of, oh, well, that didn't work in this situation, or this worked instead of that. It's like, it doesn't negate the fact that that thing is still beneficial. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
So let's just say next year there's another pandemic.
God forbid.
And through rules and regulations, we forced a majority of the population to stick a needle in their arm for the sake of everyone else. Okay. And there were people who didn't, and they experienced the repercussions of not following the rule and regulation. And since then, it was a bad choice to make it necessary. So it'd be cool if we were like, we got this vaccine. You could do it if you want to do it. You choose for your own family. We're not going to hold it against you. You just behave however you would. Let's just say now we have another pandemic and we do it'd be real helpful to get a vaccine right now, right? Mm-hmm. What percentage of the population, let's just say it was 90% of the population took it the first time around. What do you think? Do you think the percentage would be lower than 90% this time or higher than 90%?
If we had another of the same?
Yes.
Well, they're probably going to say, well, clearly that didn't work.
Okay. Percentage-wise, how many more people would take it if the government said you should take it now than before? Would higher than 90%?
Take it now, even though we just had the same one.
No. Oh. I'm saying another one comes out and then there's a vaccine for it. Yeah. And we're comparing that 90% of the population did it. So scrap that. How much percentage of the population would say, oh, pandemic, they did a good job last time, and let me take it again? The percentage of the people that do that, would it be higher than 90% or lower than 90%?
If they thought they did a good job, it'd probably be the same.
You think 90% would still take a second vaccine for the new pandemic?
If they believed that
No, I'm just saying, if you just snapshotted everybody that did it, would it be 90% of the people now decided to do it again, or less than 90%?
I feel like it would depend on how the first round was handled.
Well, you know how it was handled. It's already happened.
Okay, so we're talking about COVID. We're not talking hypothetically.
Don't say that word. Come on.
We're talking about it, not just a hypothetical.
Hypothetical.
Okay. Well, then, no.
You think less than 90% would take it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, so things got worse. The way that it was handled, the things that you did, were just snapshotting and measuring it. Now I'm with Dennis. I think about 50% of the people would take it a second time. Now you're in government. You're like, holy crap. Like, that's worse. Now you have the option. Now we're at 50%. We go through that whole thing and we're like, we got to make things better than 50%. How do we get it back to above 50%? What would you do to increase the probability that someone would do something that you believe is better for them? And what would you do to make it worse than 50%? Like, name some engineering steps that you can take to make a better than 50% result and worse than 50% result.
I mean, if you want more people to take it, then you start with the fear mongering and the scare tactics. And if you don't, this is going to happen.
Well, they did that and they ruined the fear. The fear mongering is not going to work a second time. They use that. That's off the clip. So now what happens? You have to have the measurable things. Now I have to say what it's going to do, and you're going to say it, and I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to have to prove it, because the second time around, we're not going to blindly trust you that it's going to do it. We want to
see the proof.
See it. And if you don't have the deal, then you're not going to improve it. So then it's going to be like, oh, so we got to be better in order to get a better result. Now meritocracy starts to like grow out of the ground. Now they know what they have to do. They can't use force and legislation because you're not going to listen.
I was saying, I mean, they can try.
I
feel like they would try.
Right.
Certain ones, not all, but yeah.
Let's see. Just because last time it was promised to prevent COVID, then it came out that it was just helpful for the symptoms. There's a huge mistrust in the government. That's what they bought. They bought the mistrust because they said things that weren't true. We know why they said it, because they wanted everybody to do it.
Yeah.
But they didn't give two shits about the people who would take injury because of it. So people were getting turbo cancer and they're having blood clots and inflammation over their body. All those people that are damaged, the government's not rushing back and saying, "Oh, we're so sorry. Let me make this all better for you." You're just a casualty, right? And I saved lots of people dying from the panic that dying would cause. And I just delivered you more dying. So I'm not good at this. Let me get some people who can be unbiased and just give people truth.
Which is then, oh my God, it makes me, I'm going to get on the, all right, I'm not going to get on a soapbox about this, but in the situation that didn't work, that we saw, oops, a doctor was behind it. Dr. So-and-so was behind it. Then someone else comes in and says, hey, you know what? Clearly, we didn't have a lot of information. We've got more now. This may not have been a good idea. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to lay out all the info for you. We're going to lay out the pros and cons. We're going to show you the studies. We're going to show you what we have. And then you guys see what you want to do. But you're not a doctor. But you're not. So when it didn't work out, but they had a doctor behind their name, or it could work out and we're going to give you more info without the title, who do you trust more?
I trust the logic person more than the credentialed person.
The person who I will show you everything. And it drives me insane. I saw somebody post on Facebook recently. It was that whole idea we talked before about when RFK was in that Senate hearing, and he said, people should not take medical advice from me. If you want to take it from your doctor, take it from your doctor. And they ran with it. He's even telling us we shouldn't take medical advice from him. I can't believe this. Right. He has the information. You know what I want from someone in that position? I want you to show us information. I want you to show us what's actually happening. I want you to show us and be an open book and let us make the decisions. If I still don't know and I want to go to my doctor and I say, now I'm asking for a medical opinion about something, that is different. That's not what he needs to do. And it's like, and anybody that wants to push back on that, I say, okay, well, there was a time where there was the title of doctor behind someone. Do you feel that you were more informed or better informed?
Well, you have to make the case to me. Are there any idiot doctors? Are there people that are really just not smart that have credentialed and purchased the slip of paper that's on their wall? I think that there's a lot of idiots that are doctors. I think you have this, I'm really stupid, but I managed to get through medical school. You have the, I'm pretty smart, but I'm captured by the business of medicine and I make decisions based on my own prosperity. And then you have the one that's less likely, and the people that are just really smart doctors who practice good medicine. And we all know them. I could sample 100 doctors, ask them 10 questions, and I know which ones I would listen to. And in my experience, I probably have maybe met 50 doctors, and there's 2 of them that I can name right now. Of the 2 of the 50 would be my ratio, that they could give me good advice, that they weren't just telling me something they wanted to do, that took the time to get an understanding of the deal. Everybody else was either too stupid or captured. So if the ratio,
they weren't getting benefits from the med,
if the ratio is 2 to 50, that is a bad ratio. That's not outliers that are being captured by an industry. That's a majority of credentialed people. I don't trust that.
Yeah. Dennis says we need celebrity PR campaigns and dancing or nurse videos.
Yeah. Again, stupid people.
Yeah.
Stupid people are everywhere. So the millennials have made their way into society, and everything that you hoped they would never be granted power was not correct. They are everywhere, not having an understanding for how anything works, and they're able to make decisions, and you get to pay for them. That's where we're at. I blame all the millennials. So, all right. Well, who's after millennials?
Is it Gen Z? No, Gen Z is young right now, right? Okay. Gen A?
No, Alpha's after Z. So
okay,
I think it's Gen
millennial Z, Alpha.
Yeah, I don't think Zs are in society, so I'm still going to say that millennials are the dumb ones.
You don't think Zs are in society?
Not making decisions yet. They're probably on the first rungs.
Maybe
yeah, they're not going to change things for the worse. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're old enough now that they could become something, but I think I blame most everything on millennials at this point, because I knew they were going to do that.
What are
you? What, Gen X? Because X, millennial, Z.
I'm only a few years younger than you.
Yeah, I'm from the smart generation. So we had the greatest generation.
I missed it by that much. Joanne says, Michael Hogan. I was coming here to say that. Thank you. Who's Michael Hogan? Joanne, could you come here to say a little more?
Okay.
Who's Michael Hogan again?
Let's see. He said something about morality. Morality and ethics have to be taught, I believe. Dominic says, just because last time it was promised to prevent COVID. Oh, I read that one. We need, and okay. Yeah, we got them all.
Dennis said something about up top. If you go up a little more, being a dink sounds nice, but I'll take my 2 kids any day.
You know what dink is?
No.
Dual income, no kids. And yeah. And so again, the breakup of the nuclear family means that we invent a lot of like, very highly marketed alternatives to that, but yet, right? So they go on, you get dual income. So you get a married couple or a living together couple, and they go bit jobs, no kids. And then they celebrate how much freedom they have, and kids are the freaking problem. So in the same thing, we have population collapse, where we have a calamity within the next 20 years that we're not going to have enough people to do replacement, pay taxes, create things, jobs, and whatever. And you've got people celebrating that they are not participating in procreation to create the next generation of people. And again, the egotistical, narcissistic, my own prosperity over what role you play in society, which is making more human beings to replace yourself when you die.
Which I see both, because obviously, if our population is going to suffer, that is a big deal. But I don't want that mindset reproducing. You know, like we talked about idiocracy, because the couple that was making good decisions and set themselves up for success and knew how to parent didn't reproduce, and the idiots that made bad decisions and were irresponsible did. I don't want a couple that doesn't want kids to have kids.
All right. So, okay. Let's just say we did idiocracy and we produced a lot of really brain dead babies, like really off the charts, can't think, can't logic, no reason, anything. Yeah. And we had a whole civilization full of those. And then the other one is population collapse, where there's not enough people to keep things running, and it becomes a collapse of society in a different way. So which one is worse for you? Being around dumb people everywhere and all the time where they can't do anything, or they try to do things and they're not really good at anything, or not enough of them to do anything?
Feels very similar. Like nothing versus the worst of something.
Both are really bad.
Yeah. But here's why I don't understand the pushback. Like I saw a little clip of I think it was the women from The View.
Oh no.
Where
no. This is gonna be good.
It was the clip was showing hypocrisy of Whoopi Goldberg saying one thing in 2023 and then saying the exact opposite today, and how she was being a hypocrite based off of who's ever in office. But the thing was, in 2025, she was insulted about the idea of giving credits and financial breaks for things like IVF, in vitro, and things that are going to let women have more babies. And they were laughing at that and how dumb it was. And I'm like, if we are having a serious decline in our population, and it is serious enough that like, hey, we need to have more babies. But I also don't want people reproducing that are bad decision makers, that are irresponsible, and they don't want a child, so they're not going to raise the child well. Why would we not then give incentives to those that do? You know, if there is a couple that is like the couple in the beginning of Idiocracy, that we have everything we need for success, we just can't get pregnant, and maybe they could do IVF or something of that nature and reproduce, why would we not incentivize that? Why would we not say, let us help you out? Because IVF is freaking expensive. And so if that were just something, if that were the only barrier of a responsible person that could repopulate our society in a responsible manner, why would that be insulting?
All right, let me play it out for you here.
Okay.
All right, so if you're controlling the government and you want more babies, and you don't want all new babies, you would like high caliber. So let's just make it so that we take the Department of Procreation, and all it is a bunch of sex rooms. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the public, and we're going to pick people that have high intellect, and we're going to put them together in the sex room, and we're going to get them to have sex, and we're going to have really smart babies that are going to families that are of high intellect. Even, marrying people who don't even know each other. We'll set them up. We'll take someone from MIT, someone from another good school. We marry them together. We make them have a kid, right? That's their procreation license. So that would be a filter that said we got to handpick the output of who gets then put into society. One rung down from that is let's create a filter that kind of takes the people on the bottom rung that are just going to have babies naturally. We want people that maybe have a little bit more money and are willing to climb more obstacles. IVF would be the next filter up. So it takes the people down here that you don't want to breed. It's insulting because we're telling a bunch of people like, we need people in the future, but not these ones down here. So we're going to just put a barrier just high enough so they can't get over to it and have a bunch of babies that we really don't want. Does that make it clear?
I think so. Yeah. Don't make it easier for the dumb ones to reproduce.
Yeah.
But then you know what else we do that I've seen is then we make it a race issue. Oh, you just want the white babies. I'm like, so because we say we want couples that are responsible and good decision makers and are able to support children in a healthy manner, and you say we're being racist for saying
well, and
that.
these again, I dismiss these really easy because in order to you're allowed to say anything about somebody else.
Yeah.
And if you're an objective person that doesn't enter race into anything, and someone says race, you say no and you move on, because they are then it's incumbent on them to show how it's race, because the charge of race, we have race whiplash. It was so effective that everybody said it, so they're going to say it. They've devalued the argument. So sure, you can say, hey, this is about race, and then the person who never exhibits any kind of racial bias whatsoever doesn't just start on this one. I'm pretty safe to say, did you see that New York mayor who staffed his entire administration with black people, and he came out and said that black people were more generous, and he pointed out that he did it specifically because they were black.
I did not see
Dude,
that.
if I took what he wrote and just changed a couple of things and changed it to white, there would be riots in the street.
Yeah.
Because it was so racist. It wasn't even fun. Well, anyway, Dennis brought something up, babies from unvaccinated sperm. So if you got the vaccination, I've seen this a lot, where people that are unvaccinated are called purebloods. And
what?
Purebloods. And in the future, picking a mate, you're going to pick somebody who hasn't been vaccinated so they don't carry on the damage that the vaccine.
You're talking
created.
about just the one particular vaccine or all vaccines?
The C word.
Okay,
yeah. So you pick a pure blood and you only marry and mate with the person that also has pure blood, so that you don't have babies that have compromised immune systems and consequences.
Sounds like
taking
Twilight.
pure blood. I thought the same thing. Like, wasn't it Harry Potter that had pure blood?
Muggle blood.
But yeah. But that could be a consideration where you can pick what the government did to a certain part and say, I don't want that in my lineage. I don't want future generations pay a consequence for somebody who, two things, damaged their body by taking the vaccine, and were dumb enough to take the vaccine anyway. Taking those genetics and carrying them into the future might be two considerations. Those have been the two arguments that I've seen from it. Would that be a consideration? If you were a single girl and you were picking someone, would you put on your checklist of, he's 6 foot tall, he makes a lot of money, he has been unvaccinated? Would that be a consideration?
For me personally, no.
Why?
I don't hold anything against people that got it. I'll be honest, I got it. I very much was of that mindset of, I don't know. I don't have any research on this. I can't find any research on this. People that are supposedly in charge are telling me I should do this. At the time, too, a lot of corporate and businesses and workplaces were requiring it, or at least strongly encouraging it. And I came from this idea of like, I made the decision based off of the information I had, and I trusted it. And thank God I was okay. Thank God, knock on wood, I'm doing okay. So if someone said I got it because that was the information I was presented with at the time, I'm not really going to hold them against that. Hindsight, would I go back and get it? Probably not.
So if they gave a serum that would rip all that stuff out of your body, everything they did to it, you can undo it, you would take the undoing serum?
Yeah, probably.
In a heartbeat?
Yeah, if they said, hey, we think this vaccine could have been
So why does
dangerous.
why is a contingent of people who did it wish they hadn't? But I've never met anybody that didn't do it that wish they had. Is it because they're all dead? The people that should have taken it didn't are dead now and they can't complain?
I think anybody who wishes they did can still go do it. I mean, it was free. I think
taxpayers paid for it.
Now?
Taxpayers paid for it.
Oh.
It wasn't free. Free doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It was taxpayer paid for.
But people could leave their house and go get it if they wanted it. And I knew multiple people that they not only got the vaccine, they got their booster regularly. They were hardcore. They were mad if someone wasn't getting the vaccine.
All right, so let's go through that. So again, pandemic 2.0 comes up. You got to go through the same kind of problem solving. So you as a regular person, Kelin, and me as a regular person, Joe, what steps did you go through? Like for both of us, I know it wasn't like, they said do it, I'm going to do it. And they said to do it, I'm not going to do it. It was not a single dimension thought process. So how did you decide? What process did you take your brain through? Who did you trust? Like, what resources did you use to decide, yes, that's for you?
So mistake number one, I watched a lot of what they were saying on the news.
Okay. So news was
the news and like Fauci, Dr. Fauci, I was seeing what was being reported at that level. I asked a couple of doctors, a couple of pediatricians about it. I did not actually get my kids that. But I was asking a lot of other medical professionals that were local to me about it. And I still sort of got this, it's new. It's new. We don't know a whole lot about it, but what we are seeing, and one of our one of my husband's best friends is a nurse, and his wife is also a nurse. They were in the trenches. They were working in the hospitals during it. I asked them, what are you seeing? Is this really serious? Is this something? And we were told, I think you should get it. It's bad. It's real bad. And we're like, all right. And that's what we did. I said, if the higher ups that know more than me are saying I should, and the people I trust that are seeing the sickness and treating it daily are saying I should, then I'll do it.
Okay. So it was a lack of information. So if people that had comorbidities showed up at the hospital and it was really bad for them, you didn't have the data to see if you were in that group.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you were in that group, then you wouldn't have had it as bad as they did anyway.
Yeah,
So
they could have been flooded with they could have been flooded and overwhelmed with asthma patients or people elderly.
So everyone,
I don't know.
But that's the data point. Everyone they saw was real bad. And so were there any links between the people who were showing up there? And then go ahead.
Oh, there was one person I knew too. I had a gym membership at the time, and there was a guy that I didn't know well, so I don't know the medical history, but I knew was an avid gym goer, was very buff, seemed like a healthy person, got it, and was in the hospital and was bad, like was almost on a ventilator and all this stuff, watched his buddy die. And he was very He was very, I'm never getting this shot. This is bad for people. And I watched how sick he got. And that scared me too. Well, then maybe I should. And so, yeah, just a lot of probably bias, uncertain information is why I did it.
Yeah.
And where I worked, it was not required, but strongly encouraged.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think you, like most people, didn't have enough information to make a true decision on your own. I researched it for a week before I decided. And I started off with I'm going to gather all information and I'm going to profile this with what my likelihood is that I get it, which was highly likely. And am I a candidate to die from it, which was highly unlikely. And just collecting what the thing does and what it's supposed to do and who's giving it out. Like I went through every measurement and data that I possibly could. Right. And it was slightly less than a coin flip, but I knew I wasn't going to do it. I knew there was still risk. I knew that I was talking other people into taking that risk. But I knew we were on the good side of the math.
Yeah. And then I sort of like with my kids, I just sort of waited a little longer. My husband was also required. He was military. He was required to get it. He had no choice in the matter. So we both did it. And I was sort of like, I'm going to see what happens to us before I give it to them. And I was still talking to pediatricians. I was still getting sort of conflicted information. Everybody was like, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. We can't steer you either way. Well, during this, my kids got it. And I said, we all have it. It is in our household. We lost our taste, our smell. And then it was like a cold. And I just said, they have it already. I want to see what happens. And they were fine. They were totally fine. And so thank God, knock on wood, I said, we're very lucky. We were all fine. So then I kind of used that as a data point. I said, I saw that they were okay. So I'm not going to do anything then. I'm going to see what their immune system does. And we got it again. We had it a couple of times. And again, we were fine. And so I kind of just said, well, I'm going to leave this alone then. And I'm not going to have them take it because I've now seen twice now that they fought it off. And if that's when, more information started coming in of, hey, maybe this isn't good for some people. I said, well, if it's possible that it's not good for some people and I have witnessed them fight it off themselves, I'm going to just leave it. And so we did.
Yeah. And that's helpful because if you consider that it might happen again in the future, you're going to be put in the same positions again.
Yeah.
And through discussions, you know that there are people like you who want more information. Some people who just want to follow whatever the Dr. Fauci's of the world. Duke said, watch this for 30 seconds. I can feel myself getting dumber. Yeah. We're talking about things like, humanity and preserving civilization and the pandemic's response to it, where intelligent people try to make good decisions. This might not be for you. You might want to, I think, Dancing with the Stars and maybe,
especially if you're an internet troll just trying to.
So there's definitely content for you. Usually memes have a lot of like the quick hitting, make you chuckle inside. That might be more of your flavor. So thanks, Duke, for joining us anyhow.
I like how Dennis said, it's not your fault. You got it. It's their fault. They lied and said it was safe.
Yeah. You were following an authority that told you what you're doing was smart.
Yeah.
And I'm a rebel and I pushed back on authority and said, I might know more from you. And I just looked on Reddit and I found the smartest sounding person on Reddit, and they said, don't take it. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm not taking it.
Yeah. I mean, and it was, and that's the thing too, is why, like, I don't in any way get frustrated with the idea that the person who is in Health and Human Services right now is not this doctor, is not this person that flat out says, like, he gets a lot of flack in those Senate meetings where they say, will you just say flat out, somebody should take this? Just say it. Why would you not say somebody should take this? I'm like, I don't want that position saying somebody should take this. No, like, we had that and you saw how it worked out. I don't care what that secretary, whether it's RFK Jr., whether it's Fauci, whether it's anybody, I don't care what their opinion is. I want the information. If I want a medical opinion, I'll go ask for a medical opinion. Their position is, here are the studies. Here is our information. Here's what we're telling doctors that we are finding. If your doctor then translates that into, I think this could be good for you, I think it could not be good for you based on your own medical history, let them make that decision. Why would we make that person tell us what we should and shouldn't do?
You can use the ventilators as a really good example. I don't think there was anything nefarious about the ventilator suggestion. I think in theory that it was a respiratory infection, and if you're having trouble breathing, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what killed a lot of people, is that was their first revision. And they didn't say, this is our first revision, we might be wrong on a lot of stuff. So only do this if you are at a high probability of death over this. Take some risks here. But they were like, we're going to take this thing that we know nothing about and apply it to everyone across the planet. So, but that's what the trust would be. If I'm talking to a person that's speaking in absolutes and they won't be honest about how little they absolutely know about it. If they say, take this, it's totally safe, right? I don't believe that it's totally safe because there's not enough time to know that information.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the thing, is like,
was that a good Fauci impression, by the way? I think it was terrible, but I tried to get close.
I didn't know that you were doing Fauci.
It was that bad.
It was so bad I didn't even pick up on that. Yeah, and that was the thing, is I feel like that was a time that we had to make very big decisions in a very short amount of time. That to me is like, I didn't like the pressure. And it was sort of presented in a way of like, sorry, there is no time. You know, like, get the executive order. This has to happen. It's doomsday. This is live or die. Trust us and take it or don't. And it was like, oh my God. Like, just the whole urgency of it, the scariness of it was like, that was messed up. And I'm not implying they did this on purpose. Maybe they did. If that was on purpose for their own gain, that urgency, that fear, that let people die alone in the hospital when their family members couldn't come in. You know, people were committing suicide because of everything. The shut in your homes and don't leave and don't do it. Like, if that was all orchestrated out of pure corruption, that's one of the most evil things I have ever witnessed.
Very unlikely, though. This is more probable. You gave bad advice, right? And you know a lot of people followed it. And now you know it's wrong. Is it easier to just go into the bushes like Homer Simpson and let it go, or come out and say, I was wrong? Because you're undermined no matter what. Either you can maybe deflect and escape it being your fault. You can just say whatever. But you'd expect that government officials would do the hard thing just to be honest and give you the information. And that's the part that's mistrust. If you know somebody that can tell on themselves, like I heard Elon Musk the other day, I heard Rubio say the other day, when we're cutting big programs, there's going to be stuff that we cut that's wrong, and we're going to go back and put those things back in there.
RFK has said that.
Yes. I trust that, because you're admitting that there are going to be mistakes because you're trying to solve it. You're not trying to make the mistake. And when you say that you made a mistake, don't gang pile me. We're going to fix it as soon as we possible. That's a trustworthy person versus someone who does the wrong thing and backs into the bushes. And you're like, what the frig?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for them to say, look, we did what we could with the information we had. It seemed scary. It seemed urgent. And hindsight, like, we were wrong. We were wrong. And in the future, we're not going to do this. Like, you're still going to have people who are upset, of course. But I think you also then create people that if you don't do that, if you continue to say, well, this was still the right thing. When all the evidence is to the contrary, that's when, okay, well, now you've created mistrust. So God forbid something happens that is urgent and necessary and medically sound. And oh my gosh, this is important. We're all going to be like, nope, you've cried wolf one too many times.
So if I took a scorecard and I put all of what I thought all of that stuff was, these are my predictions. I didn't knew like anybody else. And I put everything and I gave myself a grade. I scored higher than a credentialed lead of the NIH. Him being wrong, me being wrong, I was more right than that. So the next time, don't ask anybody else. Ask me. And you're just going to get the information that I know that I know. And I'm going to tell you what I don't know. And it's unknowable by a person that's in my position.
I will admit, I have gotten exponentially smarter, healthier, and at least more distrusting maybe by coming to you first. Like I'll be like, Joe, what do you think about this? How do you feel about this?
Because you're just getting truth. You can make your own decisions. I'm not forcing you into it. I'm using me as an encyclopedia. I'm just telling you what I know and what I don't know.
And I think more people need to do that. Like, when we talk about people's hatred for Trump or Biden or politics, I used to have very deep biases towards politics in one form or another. But I thought to myself, okay, well, why is there a gap? Like, why is everybody so divided on this? Clearly, like half the population is seeing something I don't. So I go and I ask them, can you tell me why you like this person or you don't like this person or you trust this and you don't trust that? And not in a combative way, not in a debate, not I'm going to do this gotcha moment and I'm going to prove you're wrong and I'm going to come, but to truly understand what it is. You see a whole different picture when you do that.
Carter says, I think it was a test to see if the government could control the masses. Interesting theory. Probability wise, what was, okay, let me set 3 different scenarios and you pick the one that's most likely.
Okay.
So the government, in conjunction with China, was creating biological weapons and then creating antidotes to those deals. And they did it a bunch of times so that whatever our enemies threw at us, we already had things developed so that we almost invited a new preparedness that we wouldn't have had.
So we were ready for like biological warfare.
Yeah. So they created biological weapons only to test them so that they would have antidotes for the masses. Number 2, we funded those research and China used one of our weapons against us to test our preparedness so that they really wanted to take us down. They cloaked this in a test to see how ready we were. And if they wanted to destroy the American or the world economy, they know what they would have to do. So they learned from that. Okay. Or it was our government, right, that just see what lengths they would have to go to make the entire country do something to learn from, as Carter said, take control of the masses. Of those 3, which do you think is more likely?
I'm still waiting for the option of there was an oops. They were working with it. It accidentally got out and we just ran with, we didn't want to say oops.
Okay,
we didn't want to say this happened.
So a place where a biological weapon was being massaged and genetic research was going on. Some dude went in there on the weekend, wasn't really supposed to be there. He was emptying the trash, right? Yeah. And he knocked over the beaker, it spilled on the floor, he got it on his shoe. He walked out, it spread on the grass, and then it was spread. I hope at a biological facility that it's not that easy to do an oops. I really do. Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Remember we were told it was because a guy ate a bat?
Yes, that was story number 1.
Did the government actually say that?
Where it originated from, I don't know if that was China covering their ass. This was a naturally occurring thing, or the virus. It was an adaptation because of evolution of the bats. I don't know.
I feel like it's a combination of nefarious and incompetence.
I come to that conclusion every single time.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if it's 100% whether it was our government or China purposely testing this, or if they were maybe thinking of doing that one day, or they were working on something and then incompetence creeped in and they went, oh crap.
Yeah. So it would be like January 6th. That's an equal hybrid of nefarious and incompetence. So if you don't want people that are protesting to get in a building, You either do things that make it likely or not likely. So the nefarious people put a wedge in the door because they wanted that to happen. That was a nefarious response.
Yeah.
And competent would be, I didn't think it was going to be that big, so I didn't call in the National Guard. That would be, I don't think that was nefarious. It may have been. It might have been same thing as putting it in there. They're like, I want to see this really get out of control. So I'm going to use paper barriers, not call in the National Guard, and then make it really probable that we get stormed on that day.
Yeah.
But again, a hybrid as far as I'm concerned.
Carter says, I lived in Southern California at the time, and believe or not, a paddle boarder was arrested for boarding in the Pacific Ocean, violating the Seaward rules at the time. How stupid was that?
Oh, I went on vacation too, and people were in the ocean with freaking masks on. That is a total misunderstanding of how respiratory disease gets spread. Like,
oh yeah, like beaches.
Blows my mind.
Remember they said beaches were closed, and then they were like, well, beaches are spread open and ventilated and all this.
Very unlikely that you get enough of a dosage of it that you're going to get sick from being on the same beach as somebody else in the sun with the waves and the wind and all of that.
My thing was, what is 6 feet going to do?
Stupid.
I'm like, this is supposedly so bad that you have to strip down in your garage if you went out in public, that your groceries have to stay out in the sun for UV rays before they come in your house, that people are dying because nobody can be around them and they have to die alone. But as long as you stand there and I'll stand here, we're good. Like that to me was a red flag.
Can I tell you my only overreaction to COVID? And this goes along with other psychological disorders that I have.
C-word.
So sorry.
Because
when packages got delivered, I exposed all the packages to ultraviolet light to kill anything that was on it before it came into my house. Because I didn't know if that person just sneezed or coughed on the package and handed it to me. And so I UV'd everything. I created a box with a UV light to bathe whatever came into my house in that UV light.
Well, here's one thing that we got from it that I don't hate. Sick people wearing masks, like on an airplane or wherever.
Yes.
When you are like sniffling and snotting and coughing and you put a mask on so that crap isn't everywhere, I don't hate that. Some people want to look at them like they're, oh my God, you liberal, you whatever. And I was like, I'm sorry, if you're sick, by all means, take every precaution.
Even if they're not sick, if you're wearing a mask, I know to deviate about 10 feet the other direction to stay away from you.
And I've done that before. I was traveling and I didn't feel well. And this was probably coming out of the whole pandemic. But I put one on. And I remember worrying like, oh my God, I'm going to be judged. Or people going to think I'm some loon or something for doing. But it was like, you want me to take this off? I will gladly take it off. I don't want to wear this, but I've been coughing and snotting and I'm on an airplane and I'm just being considerate.
Did you ever get pissed off at what you had to do like in retail stores or when you're out at a restaurant? Anything ever grind your gears?
Yeah. Like if you need to run in for something real quick, but you like can't come in without a mask or something. And it's like, or I was working at a front desk in an office one time. And somebody would walk in with the mask on, walk up to me and take it off to talk to me. And I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like you had to have it outside. You had
when
to
you were around no people.
You had to have it to enter the building. But as soon as you got up to my desk and put your hands on my desk and got into me, then you could remove it to talk to me. It makes a whole lot of sense. It's a breach of
protocol. My favorite protocol was in the grocery store when they put those arrows on the aisles. Like,
yes, you have to go this way.
I did not adhere to them. In fact, entering the grocery store they had 2 doors, sliding doors. One was enter, one was exit only. And where I parked, I wasn't walking all the way in the building to get on the other side. So I waited until somebody come out and I came in there. So I'd get death stares when I would do this.
Oh my
gosh. And then me going like down the wrong aisle to come back up the other aisle. I didn't do that shit either. Like I went right down the aisle and I shopped and I got the glares. People weren't happy with me. But I didn't care. The worst one was I was traveling in North Carolina and I was doing laundry at like midnight and I put my laundry in there. No one was in this place. It's night. So I put my laundry in there and I went to go pick my laundry up when it was done. And I walked in and there was like 3 people there and they're all masked up and they were all ladies. Right. Okay. And I didn't have anything. So I grabbed a towel and wrapped it around my face a couple of times and they kicked me out. Regular people bound together. And said, get out.
Mom got you.
So a Karen mom got me.
Even though you had somebody
I had a towel wrapped multiple times.
Probably thicker than their
mask. Yes. And I had to
Oh my
wait until they were
God.
done to go get my laundry because I didn't have masks with me. I
Oh.
was traveling.
That was funny too, is what constitutes a mask and what does not. Like it got to the point where to fly, you were not allowed to have, I think they were called gator masks. They were like thin material. You could wear it around your neck, pull it up, and then pull it down, pull it up, pull it down. They're like, that's not good enough. You have to have an actual mask. And I'm like, but it's the same. It's the same thickness. It's the same concept. It's the same. No. It's, you have to have a true mask. And I'm like, we're splitting hairs here, people. Like, holy cow. When it got to those little things, I went, something's
Did you have a go-to mask? Like, did you wear the same mask every day?
I don't think so. I think I had a couple of cloth ones that I kept on me or in my purse. I had a couple of disposable ones that I could
Did you
grab.
wash them regularly?
No.
Okay. Do you ever wear like the same shirt multiple days without washing?
Yeah.
Do you?
Well, it depends on what I did.
Okay, so let's just say you wore the same shirt 10 days in a row. Would you do that?
Maybe not a shirt. I've heard jeans, you're supposed to do that.
So why wouldn't you?
Because it gets stuff on it.
You get dirty.
Yeah.
Like, it's unsanitary to wear the same
your
shirt
dirt
for
gets
more
on
long.
it, deodorant gets on it.
Okay, so a
your
mask that you
sweat
wear
gets
that
on
you
it.
wear more than once, do you think your mouth and nose is expelling any dirtiness?
Yeah.
And do you think maybe you shouldn't do that?
Yeah.
You should wash it or get a clean one or whatever. How many people do you think created the most respiratory infectious point in their life because they put a diaper on their face and use the same one over and over and over again, as unclean as that would be?
Oh God, yeah. And our skin was terrible then too, just from breathing all that on your skin. Like I remember just like feeling so disgusting and oh God, it was just the
So
grossest time.
We did the grossest thing ever. Dennis says, yeah, whoever planted those pipe bombs in January 6th are nefarious. We still need answers about who that was.
Pipe bombs. I don't think I even knew there were
So
pipe
the
bombs.
conspiracy theory, don't know this to be true, but there's evidence that we might know here shortly. There were buses of either groups or FBI or government officials that they launched into the crowd to make it worse than what it was. The Ray Epps theory is probably the most prevalent that we've heard like from day one, but there were instigators that were part of the government that were trying to. This was an anti-Trump. We don't want this guy ever to be elected again. We want to destroy him and his whole followers. We want to destroy the MAGA thing. So that'd be a really good, high probability way of defaming that entire group. So if you believe that there were infiltrators in that group, we're going to know. Rubio mentioned that they've got some, maybe it's Bongino. They've got some evidence to say that there were 2 busloads of feds that made their way in there. And as Dennis was talking about, that somebody planted some pipe bombs. Was that just a protester, or was that one of these people who were implanted? That's the question.
Because you can't trust even our own people that have their agenda.
Well, all it takes is one. If you can implant, if you have the ability to do it, and you have evidence that you have done it, right? There's nothing stopping you from doing it again.
Do people know? Does the American public know that like this isn't an opinion? It is a fact. You can look it up. There is such a thing as an NGO. A non-government organization. They are a group of people hired to go protest something, to push an agenda, to go and cause disruption, to go and create some sort of narrative based off of a mass group protest. It happens. It is legal.
Do you know why they do it?
To manipulate, to
Well, yeah, but
influence.
If government is not it's a regulated what they cannot do. And when they are regulated and cannot do, they outsource to something. So think of it as an extension of government that's not regulated the same way, but it's funded, orchestrated, and strategized with government. It's just a weapon that they create to do something they're not allowed to do.
If the actual politician, him or herself, went out to do something, well, that's obvious. They're pushing what they want. But if that politician hires a group of 20, 25, 30 people to go do it, who's going to, oh my gosh, this must be what the people want. Oh, there must be
okay. So
here.
in regular world, if I created an accessory, right? I didn't want to come and beat you up. but I went over there and that dude over there would take some money from me and he'd beat you up, he might get in trouble. But is he not an accessory to something I wanted him to do? Aren't I as complicit in the beating up as he is?
Charles Manson is in prison because he got other people to kill people. So if a politician hires a group of people to go out and manipulate and influence and push an agenda, all out of malice, all out of misinformation, whatever it is, that politician is fine. That's okay. That's okay. Because that's why I ask, I don't know if people realize that does happen and that is a thing. That you can see protesters on a street corner and they could not be legit, but they are there to manipulate you, to influence you to join their cause for whatever reason. And you think, oh man, I better get on this because these people think
I can pay a service right now that will log into this video. It'll dump 1,000 bots into this video and they'll say nice things about me. Okay. Yeah. So if it's that easy just to create a weaponry and accessory to government and it's advantageous to the strategy of their campaign or whatever they're doing, why wouldn't you do it? So we got to cut that shit off now.
And you can tell, like if you go to any YouTube video of any influencer and you look in the comments section, if I see all positive, all complimentary comments, I know they filter that. I know they do because it does not matter who it is, what the subject matter is. It doesn't matter anything. You can make a video about literally anything. The majority of the comments will be hateful, negative comments. That's just how it works. And if it's mostly positive, they're changing that. They're affecting that.
Let's see.
I like Dennis's comment about the best thing to come out of it is being able to get margaritas carry out from the local Mexican
They still do
restaurant.
That?
Well, I don't
think they were allowed.
No, they did during.
Oh, yeah. You can get alcohol delivered.
Oh my God. We had a Mexican restaurant right down the street from our house and you could order a margarita to go and it was in a plastic soup container. You know the plastic soup containers?
Oh, yeah.
Of a margarita and they just shoved a straw right in the lid.
Yes.
That was the best.
I don't think they're allowed to do it anymore.
Probably not.
I've only seen videos of the pipe bombers outside the DNC while Kamala was there. Let's see. Secret Service and Capitol Police barely responded, barely anything. It's suspect, and it's the origin of an inquiry for sure to see what really went down. And you as the listener or viewer, if the entire January 6th thing was AstroTurf to create that, is it as effective on you mentally knowing that it was a controlled theater operation from people who didn't like Trump? Does it change things for you? Or was there enough misbehavior to say, even if there were people who incited it, there were still people that misbehaved within that group? It's a good question.
That would be interesting. So speaking of kind of making a deal about things that we are unsure of, how do you feel about this whole Biden diagnosis? Have you heard about that?
Mm-hmm.
And some people are saying this isn't something that just comes out of nowhere. They had to have known about this forever. Do you care if our government knew about it and said nothing? Or to you, is it?
See, here's what happens. I hate this because this is a human life, obviously suffering, obviously sick, and he is going to be taken through the ringer for something that is political in nature.
Right.
So part of me says the government destroyed a human being in the pursuit of politics, and that is evil beyond evil. So if he had it and they didn't share it, they basically, and we knew this going in, they were willing to sacrifice Joe Biden to the machine for the sake of politics. So that's just cruel. That's the way that I feel about it.
Could it have been Biden's family himself wanting to sort of say, hey, this is our medical issue. It's not the public's business. I don't want anyone to know this.
It would be understandable, to be reasonable if they said that. But is it for the public interest to be able to pursue to find which it is?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I'm sort of conflicted on this to where I could absolutely see a family, a person, a human being get this diagnosis and be like, listen, I want to fulfill my duties. I want to do what I can do. It's HIPAA. I don't have to tell anybody. So let me just keep this private. At the same time, if you have a diagnosis and the American people are already concerned about your health, is that something you should disclose? I'm a little conflicted on this.
So hypothetically, then, if he knew he had cancer going into even the first term, and he was already kind of losing his marbles with Alzheimer's or whatever, and then he agreed to be martyred, where using him in all the ways that they did because he knew he was on his way out. All three of those are just terrible in nature because we're talking about a human life that was sacrificed for the sake of politics, and that turns my stomach.
Yeah. And we do that. God, we do that so much.
But that is the theme. The government is willing to make you go away if it gives them an advantage, and that would satisfy no moral obligation. So for the sake of theme on the show is that people do not come to moral conclusions before they come to self-interest. So if Biden says he has cancer and it hurts the party, there should be no one willing in the Democrat Party to say, hey, we're not going to do the wrong thing and sacrifice this guy for the party. If they're like, hey, he's on his way out anyway, might as well. Shows an evil of where we're at and what morality we come to conclusion-wise when there isn't a governing, moral code that we all follow.
Yeah. Carter says, Pelosi knew there would be trouble. She knew if there was trouble, people would put it on Trump. Mission accomplished. She was a conniving soul.
Yeah. Totally probable, totally conceivable where I can say that people willing to sacrifice other people and use chaos to an end. I don't want those people near levers, though.
I feel like it's a little ridiculous that we get in political disputes over the Pope. That, like, the Pope is not meant to be right wing or left wing, right? I mean, you expect because of the religion that there's going to be some conservativeness there. So how did we get to political fighting with the Pope? Is it just that we as a nation have gotten that bad?
They did that.
Who's they?
The church.
You
the church
so?
did it. Oh, when you start playing in politics, when you line up messaging and what the church is about, the play part of the political game, now it's fodder. So if the president of the United States kept their kids out of the spotlight, right, it would not be fair to attack the kids. But what if the president brought their kid out and started using them as a token of politics to push agenda? Now they're fodder. Now you can criticize and make it political because they did that. They brought themselves into the political discussion. So churches have to decide if they are tax exempt because of the nature of what they do, they have to stay out of politics. That's just the rules. So if the church wants to play that game and just be religious teachings, and no matter which side of politics it ends up, I'm cool with that. Keep it separate. But the minute that you're like, hey, that game over there has got a lot of energy, I want to play in that game. You made that maneuver into politics. It's your consequence.
I could see that. So you think if they want to go ahead and speak out on different issues, that's them sort of entering that
100%.
game.
They entered that lane, and it is what's due when you play that game. You can't insulate and say, don't attack me politically when you just use your platform to go politics. So it's their fault.
I even saw a lot of people were saying that this past Pope was sort of more left-leaning and liberal. And then I saw a video online of Michael Knowles, who's very conservative, saying absolutely not, with the exception of what he said about immigration. He was quite conservative. But the idea that he said anything about immigration,
he got in the political realm.
Was him playing
he needed to stay out of the political games. Now, if you want to enact change that affects politics, but do it on the level where nobody sees, then fine.
Okay. Carter says that's why she refused the National Guard. Just read the book by the Capitol Police Chief. He warned her, and he ended up being the scapegoat.
Again, high probability that it was orchestrated. And the defining was Pelosi put together a documentary, and she had a camera crew in the Capitol when it was being stormed. So what is the likelihood that she scheduled the camera crew that day that the Capitol was happening to be well documented from her perspective? Very unlikely. So all of these things added up. If police or detectives were doing this, there would be a lot of evidence to say that this was contrived.
Yeah. This was a setup.
Yeah. And I don't know that it is. I don't know that it isn't. But if I were doing the whole vaccine, weighing out, I would come to the conclusion that it's highly likely that it did.
I could see that. Trust no one. That's the theme of this.
I'll learn you. I will learn you that you should never, ever, ever trust people who are wrong so often.
especially what they have to gain from it. Yeah, because like you said, there's a difference between incompetence and nefarious. And you show me that you're just incompetent, I might not like it, but I won't feel the same way as you show me that you are manipulative and you are trying to, manipulate people and be corrupt and all this other. Okay, now I'm really going to think something different.
So if pretty much every politician we put through that filter, they're either incompetent or nefarious, and those are the people we put in charge of things. That should not be like a bare minimum that you either have the merit that you're good at something, right, or you're not an evil person. There should be like a test that you take before you go in there to prove which of those two. If you check both those boxes, you're done.
And if you enter a good, trustworthy person and you become corrupt, well, here's the line that says, "All right, thanks, you're now done." Next.
But you would have to have a moral voting block in order for it to even care whether or not your side is either incompetent or whatever, and you don't have a moral voting. That's why we're sunk.
We are sunk because you can't even say anything. You can't go in and be like, here's what I want to do, and here's why I want to do it, and here's why it's helpful. It's already rigged when you get there. Even if you're a good person, if you're trustworthy, if you're doing things for the right reason, you're serving the people, it's rigged when you show up. They will not let you be that way. You can't. You can't say I have a perfectly good, logical, helpful explanation for why I'm doing what I'm doing. Let me tell you what it is. Nope, you're not on our team. Absolutely not.
At least we didn't hit any controversial topics today. I'm glad we stayed clear and all safe, talking about puppies and butterflies.
We all could agree on this.
Yes. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll catch you tomorrow. Kelin and I will be back both Thursday and Friday. We'll talk maybe some pop culture. We'll go a little lighter. We got all this out. This has been building up.
Fun stuff.
Yeah. All right. Take care, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.